with his wife, decided to go in goals together. And they went from town to town, trying to avoid being identified. And lived Banias until they showed up in the city that Nosson Adler, the Rebbe, the Chassam Sofer, until they reached that city. And Reb Nosson Adler had heard that there was a holy Yid, the name of the Shagazaye, who was doing this, who was going into Golos. So he notified the guest house where the Schnorrs should stay as they passed through town, that if you see a couple like this, that you see are very holy, make sure to let me know. And Kachava, so Reb Nosson Adler convinced the Shagasaye to take a position. He says, how long could you not share your godless with Klal Yisrael? So he forced him to take a position. Now Reb Nosson Adler was much younger than the Shagasaye, and he was offered a job in Marseille, France, I think it was, and he told the Shagasaye, you should go take that job. So the Shagasaye comes for his prabha, and when he's standing up to give his drasha, he sees that everybody at him is looking very disappointed. So he says, I know why you're looking disappointed. Because you want a Rav, maybe who's 40 years old, so you know you have a good 30 years on him till he dies, till you have to replace him. And I'm an older man, he was 60 at the time, so you're afraid your investment is going to go sour. He says, I promise you that you'll have me for at least 30 years. And in fact, the Shagasaye died when he was exactly 90 years old. So he actually was a Rav there for 30 years. Okay, so yesterday we were discussing the shaila between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. If you have a kinyan peiros, if it's a kinyan aguftami, legabe being maybe bikurim v'kairei, can you say asher nosat alav? The Gemara did not end up bringing a raya either way. The Gemara wanted to suggest that maybe it would be a machlokes tanoim, and the Gemara discussed steachuza that a son bought from his father, and there was a discussion whether or not you need a pasuk to tell you that if a son bought a steachuza from his father, so by the son it's a stei mikneh, and the father died. Now the son yashined it fully, and then the son was makdash. Is that called being makdash steachuza, and he'll lose it by yovel, or is that called being makdash stei mikneh? And the Gemara said, in fact, that you need a pasuk to tell you, according to Reb Meir, you needed a pasuk to tell you that that's considered a steachuza, which is puzzling as to why. It must be because Reb Meir holds kinyan peiros is kekina guftami, and when his father died, he wasn't really yarshining any more interest in this property that he hadn't already purchased, and therefore by him it never really changes status from stei mikneh to steachuza. And that's why you need a pasuk to tell me that it's considered a steachuza, and if it's donated to hekdesh and it's not redeemed before yovel, it's going to end up going to the Kaihanim. We had another pasuk to tell you, according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, that even if you donated it to hekdesh before your father died, it's still considered a steachuza, because it's only considered a stei mikneh if it's a soda that would never become a steachuza. But since this is a field that by him is stei mikneh, but eventually it's going to become a steachuza because eventually it's going to yashin it, it's called a steachuza. Okay, gewaltig. Then the Gemara told us that if you don't hold kinyan peiros and kinyan aguf, we're going to have a problem. How is it that everybody can bring bikurim from their properties if there was a chalukah? And we know achem shecholku lekuchesei kum dechois, that all of the ownership that people have in properties are only a kinyan peiros, since it always reverses by yovel. So the Gemara said it must be like the whole Rabbi Yochanan. Tosfos tells us halacha l'maaseh we hold like Rish Lakish. The Gemara arise to Rish Lakish, and there's not a problem of giving bikurim because even though yes it's chosher b'yovel because it's l'kuch ha'shein, even if it's l'kuch ha'shein, not everybody holds that it's chosher b'yovel. Could be that a regular mecher is chosher b'yovel, but when the Yerusha is split up, it wouldn't be chosher b'yovel. That would be logical because otherwise, could you imagine generations later when it's split among so many different families, every yovel would be a disaster having to re-split everything all over again. Beautiful. The Gemara ended up asking like Rish Lakish, it brought a pasuk, it brought a brisa, and we even had halacha talking about the interest that a Baal has in the nechasim of his wife, and we say he doesn't have a kina guf in it, and therefore without being specifically appointed as a representative of the Isha, he wouldn't be able to represent the side of the karka in a dispute, in a legal dispute, unless the plaintiff was also touching on the payers where he does have a kinyan in. We'll say once he could answer the entire for the payers, he can also represent the karka as well. Thank you very much. Okay, so then we started the new parak of Hanazakin, and Tosfos says the segue to Hanazakin from the parak before is only because we were talking about Tikkun Olam, and the Gemara is running, the Tana is running with the svara of Tikkun Olam. Hanazakin Shomin Be'idis. Why? Because of Tikkun Olam. So someone's shor is mazik someone else's property, and the mazik doesn't have cash with which to pay, he's going to be paying with property, he has to pay with idis. Why? Mipnei tikkun olam. Break the Gemara, mipnei tikkun olam, da'iraisi. Is it not a pasuk in the Torah that says, meitav sadeyu, umeitav karma yishalem? Amar Abaye lo tricha elo Rabbi Shmuel. Our Mishnah is following the Shita of Rabbi Shmuel, the Amar midiraisa, when it says you pay with meitav, it's with the nizik sheminon. If the nizik if you look at the nizik's property and you look at the highest grade property that he has, that grade property is the property with which the mazik has to pay back. Well, what if the mazik has even better quality property than that? And maybe the mazik's worst available property is equal to the nizik's best available property. The mazik would be able to give his worst property. Why? Because it's still on par with the best property that the nizik has. Kamash Lon the Tikkun Olam, the Tikkun Olam, Shaminon the mazik has to give his own best property. And Rashi tells us the reason for this is we want to teach people that it's very bad to cause damage. So as Rashi says in the last skinny line, we want people to know it's going to cost them a lot of money. And they're going to lose their best assets if they're mazik, and therefore they should be very careful. They should not be lackadaisical in the watching of their animals. Let's delve into this Rabbi Shmuel. We have a machlokes if it's midaraisa, but nidik sheminon or b'damazik sheminon. And we're going to soon see that in the havaming of the Gemara over here, b'dinidik sheminon doesn't just mean that the quality property with which you pay is similar to that property. It's actually going to say that if the mazik's animal damaged a part of the nizik's field, and we don't know which part it damaged, we assume that it damaged the most expensive property. That already is touching into how much money he's going to pay. Up until now, we discussed how much the damages is fixed. Now, when you pay back this fixed damage, let's say it's $10,000 damage, what type of property do you use to pay with? The Gemara will have a having Rabbi Shmuel that the question of how much he's going to pay. The Tanya we learned, meitav sadeyu umeitav karmo yishalim. If someone does damage, he has to pay back with meitav sadeyu umeitav karmo yishalim. Zok the brayso meitav sadeyu shel nizik umeitav karmo shel nizik divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva Omer, lo ba kosov elo ligvois l'nizakin min ha'edus. I'm not so machmer like you are, Rabbi Yishmael. The pasuk is only coming to tell the nizak, to tell us that by nizakin you get from edus. Vikal v'chaymer lehektish and kol shekei b'hektish, which at this point we don't even know what that means. The Gemara is going to delve into that a little bit later. But I made a point to say that Rabbi Kiva says loy ba'akosav el ligvas l'zakman edus. The Torah isn't being as machmer as you, Rabbi Yishmael. Rather, the Torah only means to be goyba l'zakman edus. So I pointed that out because that sounds a little bit funny, because we thought that Rabbi Kiva is machmer, right? He's saying it's min hamazik. Here it sounds from Rabbi Kiva's wording of loy ba'akosav that he's actually being makel. So that's something we'll see a little bit later.
If the mazik is better,
then it's not. Then there's not even a havamina that he has to pay the edus of the nizik. He doesn't have to go out and buy property that he doesn't have. It's only the discussion is the mazik paying with property that he has. The nizik can just give over cash. Zok to Gemara, Rabbi Yishmael. I don't understand. So let's stop a second. At this point, what does the Gemara think Rabbi Yishmael means that the bidin nizak sheminan? What it means is again, he did damage in a row. There are some rows in the nizak's fields that are worth $1,000, and there are some rows that are worth $10,000. We don't know what row it was that he damaged, or we don't know what it was before it was damaged. So the halach is you got to pay as if it's the best row. Now you hear right away that is a huge chumrah. It's way over a chumrah of what type of property you use. We're talking about you got to pay me more, possibly even more than the damage that was done. So that's what the Gemara asks. If that's shot, as the Havamina of the Gemara thinks, that you're going to actually pay more than what your damage is, are you suggesting that even if he ate a shvacher a piece that was only worth $1,000 and he only did $1,000 damage, are you suggesting that the mazik has to pay $10,000? Amar Avidi bar Avin, hacha b'may askinon, so I was a little bit wrong. The first shot that we just attacked was you're not sure what it was. You know for sure this row was only worth $1,000, but there are other rows in the field that might be worth $10,000. And so like a knas, you make the mazik pay a higher value than what he actually damaged. Correct, is that logical? That so no, maybe it's being worth a suffix. Maybe that's where the Torah tells you, according to Rabbi Shmuel, the Mishalem Levi Meitav. Amar Rabbi, you can't say that either. Because let me ask you a question. If you know that he only did damage for $1,000, everybody agrees that Mishalem Chusha pays $1,000. Hasha the lo yadina. Now that we're not sure what row he ate, you're going to say Mishalem Shemena? In din, it doesn't work that way. In din, it's hamoitzi mechaver al varaya. You have to prove, if you want to make me pay you, you have to prove that I damaged the more expensive row. How could you say that there should be a pshat that you actually pay misofik more than what you damaged? Ella Amar Rab Acha bar Yaakov, Zok Rab Acha bar Yaakov. Let me tell you the pshat in Rabbi Shmuel. Avada, you never pay more money or more value than what you damaged. If you damaged 1,000, you pay 1,000. You damaged 10,000, you pay 10,000. All Rabbi Shmuel means is hacha b'may askinon to go into haisa idis the nizik his iburis the masik. Even the best property that the nizik owned was still only as good as the lowest level property that the mazik had. And there, Rabbi Shmuel savar v'the nizik shaminon, Rabbi Kiva savar v'the mazik shaminon. That's the whole question. So Rabbi Shmuel says v'the nizik shaminon. That's midaraisa. Come to takanas chachamim al tikun ha'ilam. Our Mishnah says that even Rabbi Shmuel would agree halacha l'maisa that the mazik shaminon, and you give even better properties than the best property that the nizik has. Why? Because we want to tell mazikim, be careful, don't allow your animals to damage others. My time with Rabbi Shmuel. What is a svar Rabbi Shmuel that it's b'din nizik shaminon? Zok to Gemara. Let's look at the pasuk that we're going to be analyzing, where it talks about damage. So the Torah says, Ki yivar ish sadeh oikarim v'shilach es be'iroi u'bir b'stei acher. So if someone did damage b'stei acher in the sada of somebody else, this stei acher clearly means the sada of the nizik. That's where the damage occurred. Meitav sadeyu u'meitav karim or yishalim. The mazik has to pay meitav sadeyu. So zokt the heilige Rabbi Yishmael. Nemra sada lamata meitav sadeyu yishalim. V'nemra sada lamayla ubir b'stei acher. My sada ha'amur lamayla denizik. Just like the first sada in the pasuk is referring to the sada the nizik. Av sada amur lamata the nizik. That's why it's the nizik sheminon. Rabbi Kiva Sober, forget the sada lamayla. It says meitav sadehu. Who are we talking to? We're talking to the mazik. Meitav sadehu yishalim. Rabbi Kiva Sober, meitav sadehu yishalim. Deheich the kam. The best property of the person who's going to pay, that is the property that he's going to pay with. Rabbi Shmuel, according to Rabbi Shmuel, I'm sorry? Means it's referring to the payer. So the payer takes his best property. Rabbi Shmuel says, Ahani Gzer Shava Ba'ahani Kla. The Gzer Shava and the Pasuk he used. Now he's calling the Drush of Rabbi Shmuel Gzer Shava because Nemer Sadalamayla, Sadalamata. Doesn't literally mean Gzer Shava. It's just they're both there at the same Pasuk. Ahani Gzer Shava L'chada Amra. They teach us that but Ahani Kra. Lamaisa, there is a mashmois of the Mazik Sheminon that Rabbi Shmuel cannot deny. What does the Torah mean to tell us with that? It helps the Ista Lamazik Idis for Ziburs. Let's say the Mazik had Idis and Ziburs, but the Ziburs today loy shavya ki Idis to Nizik. But his Ziburs is a little bit worse than the Idis of the Nizik. So his Ziburs is not quite good enough to match. So now, does he get to downgrade his Ziburs? Do we say the maximum that he has to give is the Ziburish or the Nizik, and therefore he doesn't have to give his own Nidis, he can give his Ziburish, even though it's worth a little less? Or are we saying the minimum that he has to give is the Ziburish or the Nizik? So it says, Meitav Sadeyu, to teach us that the minimum that he has to give is the Ziburish or the Nizik. And if he doesn't have any Ziburish that's on par with that, then he's going to have to bump it up to the next level, the Meshalam Lei, he Meitav. That's Dairais as well. Midairaisa, if his Ziburish is not quite as good as the Idis of the Nizik, Midairaisa, he has to upgrade to his Meitav. The Tikkun Olam is, if he does have a field that's exactly the same level of quality as the Niziks, but he happens to have better as well, there's the Tikkun Olam that he's forced to give the best property that he has. The Tagu Bir B'Steyacher. I don't know if that's the case. That's the limud from. What if your store starts my store? Maybe it has the same halacha. I don't know. Right? The Torah does a whole discussion. What about Shein Beregul? Bir B'Steyacher is speaking about a shore. What about other mazikin? So the Torah over here says it applies across the board. That's called being mazik to feel. That's called being mazik to feel. Correct. If he doesn't have cash, he has to pay with a shikl pill. Yeah. Rabbi Kiva argues in Rabbi Shmuel, and he says, "Loi bo hakasuv ella ligbois l'nezakin mina idis v'kal v'chaymer lahektish." Fact the Gemara, my kal v'chaymer lahektish. What did Rabbi Kiva mean when he said kal v'chaymer lahektish? Ilema the nakre tur di dam l'tur de hektish. If your shor stoist a hektish shor and you cause hektish damage. So then when you pay hektish back, you have to pay b'meitav. You don't have to pay a penny. Because Allah is v'chigach shor ish as shor re'eyu. When is there a chiyav mazik? When your shor shtois is your friend's shor. Shor re'eyu or amar achmana v'loy shor shalektish. If your shor shtois is a shor hektish, you're a potter. You don't have to pay one penny. So how can you have to pay b'meitav? You don't have to pay anything at all. Ella, it must be la'omer harei alai mana lebedek habayis. Someone said, I'm going to give a money to bedek habayis. And now the collections department of bedek habayis wants that money. And he doesn't have the cash to pay. The Asi Gizbar b'shokal meidus. When the Gizbar takes property that belonged to this donor in order for him to pay off his pledge, he takes idis. Correct, there's no logic whatsoever that should be the case. Lo yehei ela b'achayv. Hektish should be no different than any other creditor. Ubachayv dinai bebeininis. And we know, as the Mishnah told us, that Abachayv collects only from beininis. V'chitemer kasavar Rabbi Kiva b'achayv shakel v'idis k'nezakin. And if you're going to argue that no, Rabbi Kiva argues on our Mishnah that says b'achayv is bebeininis, and Rabbi Kiva holds b'achayv is beidis, and therefore hektish will take from idis. It doesn't matter, because even if a regular b'achayv collected from idis, you still wouldn't say that hektish, that if hektish is the b'achayv, then hektish will also collect from idis. You know why? Because ikol amifrach mal b'achayv sheken yafa chayv chayv b'nezakin. You know why a human b'achayv gets to collect from idis? Because if a human also was damaged, he would get idis. Timer b'hektish sheken hur chayv b'nezakin. Hektish is more kuladik than everywhere else. You know why? Because if someone damages hektish, you don't got to pay. So you see, when it comes for hektish collecting, hektish has less rights than an individual. An individual gets idis if he's damaged, and an individual might get idis if a loiva owes him money. Hektish gets zero if it's damaged. So maybe hektish only can collect from beininis if it's a chayv. So therefore, we're going to go back to our original plan. La'olam de nakre tur de dan l'tur de hektish. When Rabbi Kiva said the kavachomer lehektish, what he meant was that a person's animal damaged hektish, and kavachomer lehektish, that hektish also has to, you have to pay hektish with idis. We ought to say a moment ago, Re'eu armar achmana v'lo hektish. Rabbi Kiva savar lo Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe. Rabbi Kiva is like Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe that if you damage hektish, you do have to pay. There's a limud of Re'eu v'lo shel hektish. That teaches us a chumrah, not a kula. The Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe Aimer shor shel hektish shenagach l'shor shel hedit. A shor of hektish that shtois the shor of hedit potter. However, the shel hedit shenagach l'shor shel hektish. So if hektish shtois is you, hektish doesn't have to pay. But if you use shtois hektish, then ben tam uvein muad mishalem nezek shalom. So shor Re'eu has a leniency for the first two shtoises where you only pay chati nezek. But shor hektish, if you shtois, you pay nezek shalom right out of the gate. Well, the Gemara says according to Rabbi Kiva, if you pay idis to a regular nizik, kavachomer, you pay idis to hektish. So it does have the same halacha. Now you're asking me, according to the other Tanoim who learned that if you shtois hektish, you pay nothing. I'll think another we should consent to pay. It's very hard for us to apply when Chazal decides to make a tikkun olam and when not. So why I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. So to Gemara, well, that's not tikkun olam. Tikkun olam means to allow people to work together. That's just protecting hektish. It's not going. The world's not going to collapse if hektish loses. But again, my reasoning is just a boichsmar. Why they make tikkun olam? I can't answer that. Okay. So Dr. Gemara ihachi oiba zoi practic Gemara mimai de beidis de nizik iziboris the mazik pligi. We're now assuming that Rabbi Kiva argues on Rabbi Shmuel on 2 points. Point 1, he holds that midaraisa, the mazik has to pay from his own idis. And point 2 is that he holds that by hektish there is a tashlumin and it's from idis, unlike Rabbi Shmuel who holds that by hektish there's no tashlumin at all. Now that we have a new machlokes over here as to whether or not you pay hektish when you damage hektish, maybe that is the only machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel. Dilma dechula amo b'nenizik shayminon. Maybe legabe what property you used to pay back, Rabbi Kiva is moeded to Rabbi Shmuel, and he's only arguing on 1 point. V'hacha beplukta the Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe v'Rabbanan kamifli. And the only point of contention between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel is whether or not you pay hektish back when you damage, and by extension, whether hektish also gets from idis or not. Very good. So let's say Rabbi Kiva is Tavalak Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe, Rabbi Shmuel Tavalak Rabbanan. Zokt the Gemara. There's 2 reasons why you can't say that. First of all, Imkein my loy b'hakot. What were Rabbi Kiva's words when he argued on Rabbi Shmuel? What Rabbi Kiva said was Rabbi Shmuel said b'didik shayminon, and Rabbi Kiva made 2 comments. Rabbi Kiva first said, Loi ba'akatuv, el ligvas nuzak minidis. So that's one independent taina in and of itself. And then the kavachomer lahektish. So oy bazoi, clearly there's two things happening over here. The oid, my kavachomer lahektish. Why would it be a kavachomer lahektish? Let's think about it. We're saying, we said hoyel v'kulahi, heichi motzi l'meimer, the kavachomer, the mekalinin nami gabi hektish. If you're going to tell me that Rabbi Kiva holds with the nizik sheminon, even Rabbi Kiva holds with the nizik sheminon, if you're going to argue, what is the kavachomer lahektish? Madich hedjit, which is kuladik, only is with the nizik and doesn't have to pay with the mazik. Kol shkin behektish, forget the svar behektish, you should pay more, not pay less. So Tosfos asks right away, no, maybe the kavachomer lahektish b'chalal, that you have to pay for me this at all. So Tosfos gets into that. It has a different sounding word, but I'll call upon them from Rabbi Kiva's words. You see that he's not just arguing about whether or not hektish. If you damage hektish, if you have to pay, they're clearly also arguing about an additional item, and that is what type of field do you pay back the nizik with? Midaraisa, Rabbi Shmuel holds it with the nizik sheminon, and Rabbi Kiva holds it with the mazik sheminon. The oid. So hektish is more chomer. Sure, because you're mechuyev to pay. If social hedjit does the social hektish, it does pay. No, it's chayiv according to Rabbi Kiva. The other Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe we're trying to say.
If we start that he says, Rabbi Shmuel, I'm not so machmir like you. Lo yibu akutus elu I'm Michael there, and I'd rather use a Michael behind you because I see that the Torah said that a social head should not be.
But Rashi says, "Hoyel v'kulahi," since to collect from the nizik is a kula. Heichi motzal lememer v'kal v'chomer de mechalina nam begabe hektish.
It's because you see that by I don't know why, but I
what kula do you see by hektish?
That you don't pay.
What are you talking about? Rabbi Kiva holds that by hektish you pay nezik sholem the first time. It's more chomerdik. No, that's talking halacha l'maisa. That's Rabbi Shimon not so. So hektish is certainly more chomer than hedjit, and he's doing a kula from it. That doesn't make sense. So must be he holds the mazik shemin. We actually have a meforsha brayso that says quite clearly what it is that Rabbi Kiva holds. Amar Bashi, Tanya, we learned behedja meforsha the brayso, turning on to Amud Beis, meitav sadeyu umeitav karmo yishalem, meitav sadeyu shal nizik umeitav karmo shal nizik, which is divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva Omer meitav sadeyu shal mazik umeitav karmo shal mazik. So here Rabbi Kiva says it clearly that it's meitav karmo shal mazik. So at this point in the Gemara, we're saying that our Mishnah that says b'damazik shaminon is mipnei tikun ha'olam, that's only according to Rabbi Shmuel. Our Mishnah will not stem according to Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Namar la'olam asnis in Rabbi Kiva. Our Mishnah could even be going according to Rabbi Kiva, the Amar midaraita b'damazik shaminon. So what is the tikun ha'olam? Zog the Gemara Rabbi Shimoni the Darish time of the Kra. Rabbi Shimon holds that you're allowed to explain why the Torah said a certain halacha, and you're even allowed to use your explanation to paskin halacha l'maisa, where whatever the reason is, if it wouldn't apply, the halacha wouldn't be that way. So all we're doing in our Mishnah is saying the reason why the Torah said b'damazik shaminan is because of tikkun olam. Umatam ko'amar matam hanazakin shamin lahem beidis midaraisa mipnei tikkun ha'olam. So now we have a perfect way to understand the Mishnah. Sai according to Rabbi Shmuel, where it's at the Rabbanon, and Sai according to Rabbi Kiva, where it's just explaining why the Torah was mechayiv a mazik to pay me'idis, as Rashi says right on the top. Rabbi Shimoni masnisin the katani v'midi da'iraisim and tikkun olam. Rabbi Shimon, so he talmud Rabbi Kiva, he was a talmud of Rabbi Kiva. To darish nami ba'olma time of the kra, but mitzia by lasachbel beged almana. You're not allowed to take the beged of an almana because she's not going to have anything to wear, and because Reb Shimon learned it's only because it doesn't look good, that he's coming every day and every night to return stuff, or it's only because she won't have it what to wear, that's the time of the Kra. He passes that by a wealthy woman, if she's the loiva, then you're allowed to take. So you see, you use the explanation of why the Torah asked something to say where it might not apply. If they take an olam, the Gemara is going to shortly explain what the tikkun olam is. The Tanya we looked in the Brisa. Amar Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon is always explaining time of the Kra. Why did the Torah say Hanizokin Shomin Lahem Be'idis? Because the people who steal, Chamsonim are people who seize property, but they pay for it. Kadesha Yomer Adam, Lama Ani Goizel. Why would I steal? V'lama Nichaimes, Lemachar Bezdin Yarden Linchasai, V'noitlin Sode Noashali. If I steal someone's property, it's not worth it. Because they're going to come back to seize my property if I don't have cash. And you know what we're going to take? They're going to take away my prized possession. They're going to take away my best property. The same way by a mazik, it says in the Torah, Meitav Shadeyu, or Meitav Karma Yishalim, they're going to consider me as a ganav like a mazik as well, and they're going to take back my best property. Therefore, I'm not going to steal. The question that we have over here is, by a chamton, why are they collecting from me? Chamton pays. So I'm not sure how that fits. Could be lavdavka, because a chamton anyway would have paid what collection is required. So then he's got them. Why does a bachoiv get beinus? Why doesn't a bachoiv have to pay back with idis? Why should a bachoiv have to pay back with idis? Shalatino delas. We want people to be eager to lend. If I'm not going to get good property, I'm not going to lend. If you don't back your chayva, your liability, with good property, I'm not going to want to lend. I don't want bad karka. Teretz is let's say I see my friend has a beautiful, beautiful field that I covet. I want it. But he doesn't want to sell it. But if I know he needs money, I'll run and offer him money, not because I want to help him with a loan, because I'm hoping that I'll be able to foreclose. I'll find an opportunity. I'll offer him 0% for 12 months, and then I'll jack it up to 21%, like these banks. So I'll be able to get that karka away from him. That's horrible intent. We don't want that to happen. No one's going to push to lend somebody money so they can get his payments. And therefore, they limited the liability of a loiva to payments. In fact, Gemara, if that's your attitude, why don't you go all the way and protect these 4 loivas completely? So then say that the Bachai could only collect from Ziburis. That's Gemara. No, that's too far. Then you're pushing the pendulum too far. Then nobody's going to want to lend money, because they're going to say, if you can't pay me back, you're going to give me some trashy karka. What am I going to do with it? I'd rather not lend you the money. Why is it that they say that a ksubas isha is b'ziburis? Divrei Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Amar Rab Shimon. If they ma amru ksubas isha b'ziburis, because we're not so concerned that a woman won't want to get married if she won't be able to collect from a high grade property. You know why? Even more than the man who wants to get married, the woman really wants to get married. And since the woman really wants to get married, therefore, we don't have to give them so much. Tosfos discusses, there's another concept that we have of mishum china, right? Sometimes we insist on giving good things to the woman, because otherwise, if they don't feel the security, if they don't feel like they're secure, that they're going to get their ksuba, if something happens to their husband, they won't want to get married at all. So how do you balance these two svaras out? So Tosfos discusses it, and the Gemara will discuss it a little bit. We'll see how they balance out. Davar acher, another reason. Now, at first glance, it seems like the Brisa is trying to give us another reason why you only pay from ziburis. But what the Gemara is about to say will make no sense. A woman can be divorced whether she likes it or not. But But if she wants out of the marriage, she can't force the husband. So why does that explain why she gets divorced? She's at a disadvantage. My davar acher. What in the world? How does this explain? How does this explain why a woman only collects from ziburis? Zok the Gemara, davar acher is not coming to address our shayla. Davar acher is coming to address a completely different shayla. And what davar acher is coming to answer, Zok Rashi, my davar acher, heichi have a timer l'ksuba l'mishkol b'ziburis. L'chitema claimer milta achriti ka'amar v'loi taima l'ziburis. This is not a reason for ziburis. So the chitema ki heicha d'chimapik la'iu takinu la rabbanon ksuba minei kinafke ihi nami liskinile rabbanon ksuba minah. The Gemara is a different question. The halacha is when a husband wants out of a marriage, he sort of gets penalties. He gets penalties. You have to pay a lot of money, right? That's one of the reasons why they make tsuba is to dissuade, to discourage people from giving divorces. So why don't you have it the other way around too? What if she insists on getting a get? Maybe she should have to also pay ksuba to dissuade her from breaking up a marriage. Since a woman can't force a get, therefore we don't need to penalize her and dissuade her from giving a get because she can't force the get anyway. He could drag his time. He could slow walk giving her the get. He has a lot of control over it, and therefore we don't need to de-incentivize her to break up a marriage because she can't do it anyway. That's correct. That's correct. Dr. Mark Subas Isha Bisiburis. Marzutra Bareder of Nachman. Marzutra Bareder of Nachman said a very interesting halacha. That the Mishnah says Subas Isha Bisiburis, that doesn't mean all the time. That's elamiyas. If the husband dies, and she's collecting your ksuba from Yisayimim, that's when our Mishnah says ksuba tisha b'sivuris. Avul day. But if he divorced his wife and he's very much alive, there, if he has to pay off his ksuba and he doesn't have cash, bebeinis, he's going to pay in beinis like a bachoi. Correct, Gemara. If our Mishnah is not talking about regular ksuba, it's only talking about ksuba that's being collected from Yisayimim miyasmei. So then my ksuba isha. Avi call milunami. Why does the Mishnah that ksubas isha you collect from Yisayim ziburis? Anything that you collect from Yisayim are ziburis. Why would the Mishnah itemize ksubas isha? The Tanan, the Hot Tanan, Ein Ephraim, Minichse Yisayim, Elam Naziburis. Elalab, you have to say that what our Mishnah means when it says ksubas isha ziburis is minei. So we have a kasha marzutra. You marzutra say that if he's paying off the ksuba himself, he pays for beinis. Our Mishnah seems to say that even if he's paying off the ksuba, he pays some ziburis. Zok Gemara, no, that's not pshat in the Mishnah. When our Mishnah says ksubas is ziburis, that's only from the Yisayimim. Why did our Mishnah have to say ksubas isha when anything you collect from Yisayimim is ziburis? Uksubas isha it's trichalei. The Mishnah needed special to tell us that even ksubas isha gets paid from ziburis. Why? Maybe since women aren't going to want to get married if they don't feel secure, and therefore maybe Yisayimim should pay in Beininus, just like the father pays in Beininus, Kamash Malam, that we don't say Mishum China. Rather, it's Almi Ziburis, Yosy Mima, Ish Roitza, Lisa Isha Roitza Lino say. Amar Rabba Toshma. So now we're asking Kasha on Marzutra. Marzutra said a chiddush that when our Mishnah says Ziburis, it only meant from the estate, from Yisayimim. But if a man is alive to pay his wife's ksuba, there he has to pay from beinis. Toshma. Reb Meir Omer ksubas isha bebeinis. Reb Meir argued and he held that the ksuba of every woman is bebeinis. Miman. Who is Reb Meir talking about paying the ksuba when he said beinis? If he's talking about Yisayimim, last later Reb Meir hadatnan ein Ephraim and nichsi Yisayimim elam nasiburis. Everybody agrees to that. So Reb Meir, when he says from beinis, he must be referring to her husband himself paying. Elalav minei. So when Reb Meir argued on the Tanakama, clearly Reb Meir was talking about he himself paying. Michlal derabbanan savri. So the Rabbanan who under those same conditions that Reb Meir says min abeinis, the Rabbanan say miziburis. That means Marzutra is wrong. in that even the man himself who's paying the ksuba should only have to pay from ziburis, not from baininus, like Mar Zutra is argued. That's not what it means. Even Reb Meir, when he says from baininus, it means from the assignment. Isn't there a rule that you only that a ksubas isha only that anytime you collect from Yisraelim, you only collect from ziburis? True, but ksubas isha would be different. The shiny ksubas isha mishum china. Ksubas isha, even though normally you collect from ziburis, you collect from Yisraelim, but ksubas isha is different because of chen. We actually collect from beins. I'm sorry. Reb Meir would argue about that. Yeah, about Yosy Mima Sha Ish Reitze Linase Lisa Isha Reitze Linas. Okay. Amar Abaye Tashma. Once again, we're going to ask Akasha on Mar Zutra. Again, what did Mar Zutra say? That if the husband himself is paying off the suba, he has to pay from beins.
All payments from should be from
Okay, so yeah, that's going to be developed. That's a good thought. Amar by Toshma, Hanazokin Shamin Lahem Beidis, Ubachoy Bebeninis, Uksuba Shisha Miziburis. Miman, what is this price you're talking about? Who are we collecting from? Elaim Miyasme, if we're talking about collecting from the assignment, which is how Mar Zutra would have to learn this brisa, because he learns Ksuba Shisha Bebeninis when the husband himself is paying it. My Ksuba Shisha. Afilu Kol Haninami. All of these items in the list, Nizakin, Bachoy, all of them, if they're collecting from Yisraelim, will only collect from Ziburis. So here you have a shtickle shtaker raya. Elav Minei, it must be speaking about him himself. And you see from here that the Tanakama holds that him himself paying of Aksuba only has to pay from Ziburis. Amar Bachabayakoi, Hacha B'mayaskinon, it's not speaking about the actual person paying up. It's going Shinasa Arev, L'nichse B'noi, L'bachoy B'noi, L'ksubas Kalosa. You have a father who signed on as an Arev to the Choy. He signed on that any liability that my son has, I'm backing him up. So now the question is, I only have to pay what my son would have paid. The Haiki Dinei, I will pay exactly according to what my son would have been mechuyev to pay. So the Haiki Dinei, if he was alive, so the Zokin, the Mazik can collect Idis, the Vachoy can collect Benis, the Haiki Dina, and the woman can only collect from Ziburis. Nizokin Vachoy, the Mechayim Gavu. Normally, when someone does Nizokin, he's still alive to the Mazik. Abachoy was money, he's still alive. So therefore, Iyuk Nami ki Magve ki Mechayim Magve. When he collects now from the father who's the Arev, he will collect the same type of payment that he would have collected from the son. But Ksubas Isha, the Lachem Isagavi, Ksubas Isha normally is paid when the husband died, especially by an Arev, because if his son was alive, then his son would have to pay. So therefore, Ul'achem Isa Miman Gavi Miyasmi, and therefore a typical collection of a ksuba would be a collection from the Tzayim. Therefore, the father who accepted upon himself to pay his son's chayvis, he only has to pay what the estate would have paid. Iyunami ki magvi kala achar misa magvi. The father's alive, the son's not alive. Because the only chiyuv of ksuba normally is to collect from ziburis. There's alive. We're talking about when the guy's alive. By Nizokin and by Loiva, the son is alive. That's right. Maybe the chiddush is true, but you wonder what the chiddush of the brisa now? I don't know. That's a good. Correct the Gemara. The typically the Arev the ksuba loy mishtabit. What about there's a rule that whoever signs as an Arev on a ksuba, it's just a ceremonial. There's no liability generated. So if we're speaking about an Arev, why do we say the Arev has to pay from Ziburis? The Arev doesn't have to pay at all. And the Arev of ksuba is ceremonial only. It's not mechayiv. So if they ever ask you to sign as an Arev, you don't have to worry. Nobody's coming after you, right? Gemara bekablin, and the Arev kablin is mechuyev. What does an Arev Kabul mean? An Arev Kabul means is, let's say I borrow money from Chaim, and then what happens is I give Chaim a mashkin that he can collect from, and then Chaim gives that mashkin to Duvi, right? Chaim gives that mashkin to Duvi, and then Duvi gives it back to me. When Chaim gave that mashkin to Duvi, Duvi is accepting upon himself to pay Chaim directly back my money. And it's part there. Those hold by the Arev Kabul. You even can go to Duvi before you come to me. Duvi can't tell you, go to Simon first. If he doesn't have money, then come to me. By Arev Kabul, you can go to Duvi first. Because you wanted him to be mechayiv himself to you. You wanted him to be mechayiv himself to you. So therefore, it's an Arev Kabul. So Zok Mahanicha Leman da Omar Kablin Apal Gav the less lay Nichse Leloiva Mishtabet Chaper. If you hold that if there's no shibud created to the loiva because he doesn't have any properties, nevertheless, if the Arev Kabul has properties, his properties will be shubid shaper, then this argument makes sense. Here clearly, when the son's alive, he doesn't have karka. It's the father who has karka. And therefore, since the son himself gets no shibud karka, how would the father get a shibud karka, even though the father was an Arev Kabul? Either it's possible that the son had his own property, but they got ruined, and therefore he's coming to collect from the Arev. She's coming to collect from the Arev. You're right. In other cases, there's no shibud. But when the father is backing up his son, there he always has full das to be mishabev himself, no matter what. Okay, we will stop here. Be'ez Hashem, we will hamshach tomorrow.